Hey, Goventurine here. Goventurine is such a cool new sort of sustain. He can be fully SP positive in some teams. He can provide some decent damage, and he even boosts your team's damage somewhat, further synergizing with follow-up teams. But he isn't just a one-trick pony glued to follow-ups, he's absolutely a universal sustain that can be just as nice to pick up as a Fu Xuan. So today we'll go through his kit, how good it is, how much he provides for our team, as well as looking at his Eidolons. Then we'll check out his best light cones and builds with relics, main stats, and stack goals for both sub DPS and sustain, which are pretty similar as we'll see. So like and sub if this helps, share to anyone that needs help, and of course, let me know if you're pulling. Anyway, let's begin. Aventurine is our very first imaginary preservation unit and provides a new sub DPS niche to the tank roster. Among base stats, his notable ones are his base defense being the highest in the game, and his base speed being pretty good for a sustain. We could also make fun of his attack being the new lowest, but he doesn't need it. For trace priority, you'll want to focus on his skill and his talent for his sustaining role. His ult and basic can be leveled afterwards for damage, but his talent provides most of his damage anyway. So let's check out those skills. We saw them in the trial, but they have some nuances to them that I'd like to show you all today. Well, of course, except his basics. His basics look beautiful, you'll use it a lot, but it is just a regular basic attack. His skill is his sustaining power. Cornerstone Deluxe will see Aventurine provide all allies with Fortified Wager, his shield effect. Not only is it a shield like a Japard or Marches, but it can actually stack up to double its base amount. At a defense of 4000 and a skill level of 10, you can expect to see a shield of 1.3k with an upper limit of 2.6k, and that is to all allies. Think of a Japard shield but on skill, it's pretty crazy. Now his talent, Shot Loaded Right, is both a damaging and utility ability. First, it will give 50% FRES to all allies with Fortified Wager, which is his shield. It will then give Aventurine 1 blind bet point whenever an ally gets hit. If he gets hit, he gets an additional blind bet. This means in an AoE attack he gets 5 blind bet immediately. Then, when Aventurine has Fortified Wager, he can resist crowd control debuffs every 2 turns. And finally, when he hits 7 blind bet points and he can have up to 10, he will unleash his 7-hit follow-up attack to random enemies. This does decent damage alone, and it really piles up as he will frequently activate it. After unlocking Aventurine's A6, it will also make ally follow-ups grant him blind bet stacks, up to 3 per Aventurine turn. And now, when he follow-ups with this A6 unlocked, he will give weaker Fortified Wagers that of course will be stacking onto his skill shield. And this is the way he stacks up to that 2x shield cap. He gives 1 weak shield to everyone and then an additional 1 to the ally with the weakest shield. Now let's look at that FRES. 50% FRES does sound like a lot, but due to enemies having effect hit rate, it isn't in fact as big as you'd hope. It makes 100% base chance debuffs drop to 68%, which is a big drop but still not perfect. However, when considering broken kill supports you've built before Aventurine's release, this becomes insane, as they will already have at least 30% FRES. So at 80% FRES, most debuffs now only have a 27% chance of applying to you. Even Kafka's higher domination chance has only a 32% chance. Note that if you do reach 100% FRES, any debuff that can't ignore FRES will be resisted as you are multiplying their chances by 0. Also, this is another reason why his talent should be leveled, as 25% FRES alone, which is his level 1, still sees enemies having a 100% chance of applying debuffs against you. FRES takes a bit to ramp up. Now on to Aventurine's ultimate, Roulette Shark, and it has a cost of 110 energy. It will give 1 to 7 blind bet at random for his follow-ups, and it will inflict a debuff as well as deal a ton of damage to a single enemy. This debuff makes all allies' attacks do increased crit damage. It essentially just adds crit damage to your attacks versus this enemy. It's a small buff really, but it's a debuff for ratio or Acheron compositions. Finally, his technique lets you experience gacha in your gacha, giving you various levels of defense buffs. Upon entering combat, this death percent will be applied to all allies for 3 turns for a very big first 3 turns of sustain, as well as a boost to Aventurine's damage. Now his A2 passive gives him crit rate scaling off of his defense past 1600 up to a permanent and insane crit rate boost of 48%. So you can kinda see where this is going. He will need 4000 defense to cap this out, and he will definitely want to, as we'll see in the stats section. His A4 gives all allies a fortified wager equal to his skill to the whole squad, right at the start of a battle. Finally, in trace bonuses, Aventurine will get an insane 35% def and 10% FRES, as well as 14.4% imaginary damage to add to his sub-DPS roll. Onto Eidolons, and his E1 is a comfy Eidolon for sustain and gives a team boost. How cute. This will now let him spam basics with any team and still sustain perfectly, though he could do this already at E0 with a strong follow-up team. E2 turns his basics into debuffing machines, applying a pretty strong 3-turn res down debuff. This is great for debuff conditional teams, especially Acheron ones, where he now debuffs every turn on top of his ultimate and on top of potential out-of-turn debuffs due to his signature or the Trent Light Cone. His E4 boosts his defense, as well as giving his talent follow-up more hits. This increases damage just like the def percent does, but also gives more energy and toughness damage due to having more hits. His E6 just gives him 150% damage permanently pretty much. This is a whale Eidolon that will let him go main DPS with no issues, but can also just make him a sustain that deletes enemies. You don't need it of course, but it's there for those Aventurine lovers. Onto his builds now. Let's first evaluate his Lycones and then we'll go to his build paths. For Lycones, you'll definitely want one with ideally a good base defense and def percent in the passive. Something like Landau's is going to be very weak for him. Let's show you how his signature, and it's of course amazing. You have the highest base defense among any Lycone, higher than Moment of Victory. Then a straight 40% def buff. And then when the wearer provides a shield, a 40% crit damage buff to the wearer, which for Aventurine is going to be permanent. And then, when the wearer does a follow-up attack, there's a 100% base chance to apply a 10% vulnerability, or a 1.1 times damage increase to all damage onto the enemy's hit. This base chance needs 67% effect hit rate to guarantee, but since he has a 7-hit follow-up attack, we don't need any, and it's a wasted stat. Do not build EHR on him. So it gives him DPS power, a lot of sustain power, and more team damage amping, as well as a debuff every follow-up. It's awesome, but of course not necessary. For E1 versus S1, E1 is much more comfier for your team, and S1 is much more comfier for Aventurine and lets him go a bit more ham on the damage. S1 also provides debuffs, so if you need them for your Ratio or Acheron teams, then prioritize S1. This Lycone can also be used amazingly for March with Acheron, as she can now apply shields to others and reliably proc this over Trend where she had some issues. Now for other Lycones, Moment of Victory is pretty great too. It gives high def percent, some useless effect hit rate, but then an aggro increase to him. It's not too big of an increase, but those extra blind bet stacks are always nice. The aggro won't make or break your runs though, your allies being hit is still great for stacks, and his shielding won't let them die anyway. If you have it though, I'd definitely use it. Alongside Moment of Victory, you have This Is Me and Concert for 2, the Battle Pass Lycone and the new Gacha 4-star Preservation Cone. Both offer def percent passives and damage boosting passives. Concert for 2 is technically better for his damage since he does most of his in follow-up attacks though. This Is Me does have a higher base def though, and at S5, according to an entry in Kuching Means, it will make his ult do 390% of his def every time, which can be awesome for nuking enemies. It just has a cost of 5 whole battle passes. Day 1 of My New Life has def percent 2 if you have it, but the res isn't needed to sustain in my opinion. Trend should not be used unless you want to use it for your Acheron team. It can also be used with Ratio, but ideally he has consistent debuffs already when running him. There is finally Destiny's Threads for Woven, but without a def percent passive, you're going to have to go ham on the main stats. It does give a nice 20% FRES though, so he will be at 80% without any substats. So for builds, we'll go 2 paths, and I'll give you all the info you need for both playstyles. So Aventurine kinda does damage anyway when you build full sustain, but nonetheless there is a variance in build path when going for full sustain or sub DPS. If you want a strong sustain, you can pull him, but ideally you're also pulling him for that cool damage he's going to be dropping on enemies, or perhaps his follow-up synergy. For either build, getting to 4k defense is the priority. This stat scales crazy for him up to that 4k, and even past it, it is still more damage and more sustain, it's just not as massive. His damage scales off of it, his sustain scales off of it, and his crit rate will scale to up to 4k defense, so he triple dips into this stat. Here is a sheet with all the def percent light cones and how much def percent they need to hit 4K def. There's also Landau's choice to showcase how hard it is to use. This doesn't include the Knight 2-piece, it includes his base defense, the light cone's base defense, and his 35% def in traces. As we can see, he will need 4 def percent main stats or 3 with great def substats on other pieces to reach 4K defense with most 4-star light cones. This is me, Moment of Victory, and of course his signature, give him some leeway to go for 2 main stats as they hit the 4K cap with only 3 main stats. You will still need those def percent substats on This Is Me, but the 5-star cones only require around 4 to 6 substats with 2 main stats. So for full tank sustain Aventurine, which is a bit of a waste of his potential, you'd stack even more defense above 4K, you'd go high speed, and you'd want to hit 50% F-res. This makes your team immortal and makes him debuff immune thanks to his 50% F-res in his talent. This will see you going def percent chest, speed boots, and def orb and rope. Energy rope I guess can be used in Acheron teams and maybe ratio for that debuff, but it's barely an increase to his ult frequency and will be a damage loss for himself. For relic sets, you'd opt for 4 Knight or 2 Knight 2 Messenger with Broken Kill as his planar ornament set. Penacony can be used to avoid annoying situations with 109 energy and also to boost a ratio, for example. If you want him to be more of a sub DPS, then this is the build for you. You still want that 4K defense, and going def percent chest and or orb is better than a crit damage chest or damage percent orb until 4K defense. Even past 4K defense, provided they have cracked substats, your def percent main stats can be just as good or better as a crit damage chest or damage percent orb with worse stats and no def percent on them. You'd also have more sustain on top. So for main stats, you get def percent until 4K defense, and then you choose the main stats you want to drop. If you have one of his best light cones, you can even drop 2. So going speed boots over def boots gives you more SP generation, safer sustain in emergencies, more blind bet since your follow-up DPS won't lap you, more ultimates, and more chances to resist CC debuffs with your talent. It will be weaker damage and shields technically, but at 4K plus defense, you're doing fine on both already. Def percent boots can be used over speed boots of course if you've got a ton of speed in subs. So speed boots would be my best pick to swap a main stat for, but if you want damage, then crit damage body and or imaginary orb are the things you want to swap. Again, swap them if they are good enough or else you'd lose damage. If you are only swapping one, they are pretty equal in performance and will depend on substats and teammates. For example, Ruan Mei will make damage percent orb a bit weaker. So you want that 4K defense, 134 speed since he is going to be popping out damage, and a nice crit ratio. Considering his free 48% crit rate, you can go for something like 70 to 140 or even 80 to 160, counting the crit rate buff and a crit damage body. But since a def percent body can be as good, your crit ratio could look terrible and he would still do the same damage. You want to go for 4 Pioneer if using his signature or trend and have sufficient debuffs from your allies, otherwise it's pretty weak. If you thus cannot use 4 Pioneer, you'll go for a 2-piece combo, and this can be 2 Knight with either 2 Duke, 2 Messenger, 2 Pioneer, or even 2 Imaginary. For ornaments, you can go inert for his own damage, or you can stick with kill if the subs are great, since it will offer team damage better than the increase that inert provides for himself. So let's see some quick energy rotations. Aventurine will adopt a basic spam playstyle if his sustain is satisfactory from follow-ups alone. Remember, he also gives a skill shield at the start of the battle. Basic spam can be used if you kill the enemies fast enough or in a heavy follow-up team like Ratio Topaz. This means he is as SP positive as a Luocha while still giving invincible shields and all the other bonuses. If on basic spam, he needs 4 turns to get to his ultimate and 4 follow-ups. This is pretty easy to achieve. If you need to use his skill, you'll opt for a skill basic rotation just like a Fushuan or a Huo Huo. This will also see you hitting a 4-turn rotation, needing only 1 to 2 follow-ups per ultimate. You can even drop to a 3-turn one if he gets hit enough, but again, it's whatever if he doesn't. So let's finish with some teams. Where does he excel? Well, first, he can be used in any team possible as he is a solo sustain, but there are of course teams where he works best, and that is follow-up teams. The best team he can be in right now is Dr. Ratio, Topaz, Silverwolf, or Ruan Mei, and Aventurine. This is the IPC core plus a multi-carry buffer. And IPC doesn't stand for what you think it does here, it instead stands for infinite poker chips, because this team will literally spam out follow-up attacks non-stop, so enjoy the animations. Aventurine buffs the 2 DPS. He gets more of his own follow-ups from them, so more team damage, and then he even procs Proof of Debt, allowing for more number attacks and thus more team damage. It is the culmination of many different follow-up synergistic units. Other follow-up teams can be, for example, a Clara team. She follow-ups as many times as she gets hit. You can also run a solo Topaz Hypercarry team, since Aventurine is enabling her pretty well. Shui Yi does follow-ups here and there, so there is some benefit to bringing Aventurine over a Luocha. Fushuan does provide crit rate and mono quantum team building though. Herta and Himiko also both spam follow-ups too, and they can be in a dual DPS team just like with Ratio Topaz. Versus Imaginary, Fire, or Ice Weak, you're going to get a ton of breaks off with their AoE toughness damage. Finally, Yanqing and Arlan do receive a buff with Aventurine out. Yanqing's problems aren't just in him taking damage though, his kit is also just pretty weak. So Aventurine being out doesn't make him S tier, it just makes him not terrible. The shields being much more frequent and stronger than Jeopard's means these two won't take damage. This means Soul Steal will never drop for Yanqing, and it also means your 1 HP Arlan won't just collapse. The shields being frequent and reapplying the turn duration also means they can use OP advanced buffers like Bronya or Sparkle, whilst again, not dying. So I hope that helped any Aventurine wanters or havers. Like and sub if it did, and share to anyone else that needs help. Also, let me know what you think of Aventurine. Thanks my amazing YouTube members, thanks for watching, and have a good day.